At 87, Jane Fonda looks nothing like you'd expect. The woman who once hated her body so much she got drunk to film nude scenes. After 5 decades of plastic surgery, she now regrets cancer that nearly killed her and a fitness empire that made her millions. Jane has completely transformed herself again. What she looks like today isn't just shocking, it's a middle finger to Hollywood that told her she'd be worthless after 40. Jane Fonda was born into fame, but behind the glamorous last name was a world of pain and pressure. Her father, Henry Fonda, was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, but at home, he was cold and painfully critical. Jane adored him, but his obsession with how she looked left lasting scars. He never said it directly, but the message was always there. If she wasn't perfect, she wasn't lovable. It wasn't just words, either. Sometimes he'd send his wife to tell Jane she needed to lose weight or dress differently. That kind of pressure on a young girl doesn't just fade, it follows you. For Jane, it led to decades of self-doubt, body image issues, and even plastic surgery she later regretted. Things got worse when Jane was just 12. Her mother, Frances Ford Seymour, had long struggled with mental illness, though Jane didn't know that at the time. She just knew her mother was often gone, in and out of institutions. One day, her mother came home with a nurse and called out for the kids. Jane was upset and didn't want to see her, so she stayed upstairs, angry. That night, her mother returned to the hospital and ended her life. Jane's father didn't tell them the truth. Instead, he said their mother died of heart failure. It was a lie meant to protect them, but it only made things worse. Jane found out the truth in the worst possible way. She was at school, flipping through a magazine when she saw it. An article saying her mother had died by suicide. No warning, no explanation, just the raw truth in print. The shock was unbearable, and after that, it was like her mother had never existed. Her father removed every trace of her. No pictures, no stories, nothing. For a long time, Jane believed it was somehow her fault. Children do that. They blame themselves. It wasn't until decades later, while writing her memoir, that she uncovered her mother's medical records and a handwritten story her mother had left behind. That's when Jane finally understood. Her mother wasn't weak or cruel. She was sick, and that changed everything. Jane's brother, Peter Fonda, went through it all too, but they handled things very differently. He was younger, more sensitive, and more openly emotional. While Jane turned her pain inward, Peter acted out. Their relationship was intense, full of competition and distance. Sometimes they wouldn't speak for months. Other times, they defended each other fiercely. Jane once said Peter was heartbroken that no one spoke about their mother. He even left gifts for her in an empty chair, just so someone would remember. Despite their differences, there was love between them, even if it was complicated. Jane tried to find herself through modeling at first. She was stunning and landed on the cover of Vogue in her early 20s. On the outside, everything looked perfect, but inside, she was falling apart. Her battle with bulimia had already started when she was a teenager. It took over her life. She would binge in secret and then purge over and over again. She hid it so well that no one knew. She felt sick, exhausted, and angry all the time, but she couldn't stop. She didn't think she'd make it to 30. Her first film was Tall Story in 1960, where she played a college cheerleader chasing after Anthony Perkins. It was light, playful, and completely opposite of the woman she would later become known as. Fierce, political, bold. Still, it put her on the map. But she wasn't just making movies. She was juggling 2 lives, one in front of the camera and one behind the curtain, where her self-doubt screamed louder than applause. Even after earning praise from big publications and a Golden Globe for Walk on the Wild Side, Jane wasn't confident in her talent. She didn't believe she was beautiful enough. Hollywood didn't help. Executives once suggested she break her jaw and remove her back teeth just to look better on camera. That kind of comment doesn't just sting, it stays. To pay for acting lessons, she took on modeling jobs, all while hiding the fact that she hated how she looked. Strangely enough, those same insecurities led her to a future no one saw coming. Years later, her obsession with fitness and body image gave birth to the workout videos that would make her an icon again in the 1980s. But long before that, there was Lee Strasberg. She walked into his studio, unsure, nervous, and desperate for real validation. Not from critics, not from family, from someone who actually understood acting. Strasberg was cold at first, distant, intimidating, but then he saw something in her. He told her she had real talent, and those words changed everything. For the first time, she believed she wasn't just a name, she was an actress. It gave her the fuel she needed to dive into serious training and step away from just being Henry Fonda's daughter. She started taking risks. She acted in French films like Joy House and Circle of Love, even appearing nude on screen, something no American American actress had dared to do at the time. And when offered the lead role in Dr. Zhivago, she turned it down. 9 months filming overseas? Not worth giving up control of her life. That was Jane, always chasing her own path, even if it meant skipping a hit movie. There were wild stories too, like the infamous tale from her Vassar day. As the legend goes, she was told to wear gloves and pearls to a formal tea, so she showed up wearing nothing but gloves and pearls. Some versions even claim she rode a motorcycle through the halls half naked. It probably never happened, but the myth stuck because it sounded like something Jane would do. Rebellious, dramatic, unforgettable. Her big break came in 1965 with Cat Ballou. She played a school teacher who turns into an outlaw, and audiences loved it. The movie was a mix of Western grit and comedy, and it became one of the year's biggest hits. It earned 5 Oscar nominations and made Jane Fonda a name Hollywood couldn't ignore anymore. Her co-star, Lee Marvin, won the Oscar, famously joking that half the award belonged to his drunken horse. But for Jane, the real prize was respect. She had finally arrived, not as her father's daughter, not as a model, not as a tabloid rumor, but as a star in her own right. In 1964, Jane Fonda did something that shocked both Hollywood and Europe. She appeared nude in a French film called La Ronde. No major American actress had ever done that before. The movie, based on a play by Arthur Schnitzler, was directed by Roger Vadim. It wasn't just the nudity that caused a stir, it was the timing. America was still conservative back then, so when a huge photo of Fonda, completely naked, was put up on a billboard in Times Square, people were stunned. Some praised her bravery, others were outraged. The movie got nominated for a Golden Globe, but the backlash was strong. In Italy, things got worse. The Catholic Church pressured the government, and in 1967, Fonda, Vadim, and 5 others from the film were actually charged with obscenity. Vadim didn't seem to care. He had a reputation for pushing limits, but Fonda didn't like how her image was used. In the US version of the film, censors even added a clumsy white square to cover parts of her body, something she found ridiculous. But one thing was clear: Jane Fonda was no longer just Henry Fonda's daughter. She was becoming a bold, fearless actress who didn't follow Hollywood rules. While working on La Ronde, Fonda fell in love with Vadim. Their romance moved fast. They got married in 1965 in Las Vegas. But this wasn't just a love story. It was the start of something bigger. Vadim helped shape her new image. Their most famous project came in 1968 with Barbarella, a wild sci-fi film filled with color, fantasy, and sex appeal. It was nothing like her earlier roles, but making it was tough. Fonda was struggling with body image issues, an eating disorder, and addiction to diet pills. She also felt insecure because of Vadim's past with Brigitte Bardot. The movie's opening scene showed Fonda naked again, but this time in zero gravity. She was so nervous, she got drunk just to get through the shoot. "I was drunk most of the time," she later admitted. That same year, she found out she was pregnant with their daughter, Vanessa. Even though the movie didn't make much money, it became iconic. Critics had mixed opinions. One even called Vadim the king of erotic trash. But the impact was huge. After Barbarella, Fonda was everywhere. She was called the most fantasized about woman in the world and landed on the cover of Life magazine. Her transformation was complete. The shy girl from a famous American family was now a bold global sex symbol. But not everything during that time felt empowering. In 1966, while filming The Game Is Over in France, something awful happened. The movie had some nude scenes, and Fonda had agreed to do them under strict conditions. She trusted the crew. The set was closed. She believed Vadim would protect her in editing, but someone betrayed that trust. A photographer secretly hid in the rafters and took pictures of her naked during filming. Those photos ended up in Playboy magazine without her permission. Fonda was horrified. She sued the magazine for $3 million. "It rocked me," she said. "It was a total invasion of privacy." This was a turning point. The film itself didn't get the respect she'd hoped for. The US version was poorly dubbed, and Vadim hated how it turned out. From then on, he started filming in both French and English to keep more control. But the real damage came from the stolen photo. For Fonda, it was a painful reminder that no matter how hard she worked, her body could still be exploited. In 1969, everything changed for Jane Fonda. Until then, many still saw her as a glamorous Hollywood star. Beautiful, famous, but not necessarily respected for her acting. That all shifted with the release of They Shoot Horses, Don't They? It was a dark, emotional film about desperate people in a Depression-era dance marathon. Jane played Gloria, a bitter, broken woman who had been pushed to her limits. Critics weren't sure she fit the part at first, first, but once the camera rolled, she stunned everyone. Her performance was raw, controlled, and heartbreaking. That role didn't just earn her critical praise, it made people see her in a new light. She wasn't just a pretty face anymore, she had something to say, and she was done holding back. Just 2 years later, she proved it all over again. In Clute, she played Bree Daniels, a New York call girl caught up in a mysterious investigation. But landing the role wasn't easy. Jane had serious doubts about whether she could pull it off. She even asked the director to replace her with someone else. But instead of walking away, she threw herself into the character. She spent nights shadowing sex workers, visiting nightclubs, and watching how they move, how they talk. At first, she felt like an outsider, too privileged, too sheltered. But the more she observed, the deeper she connected. That work paid off. The film was a hit, and Jane won her first Oscar. More importantly, she shattered another Hollywood stereotype. Her character wasn't just a victim or a sidekick. She was layered, strong, and real. That kind of role for women was rare, and Jane made it unforgettable. While her career was on fire, something else was happening. Her political awareness was growing fast. She wasn't just playing strong characters, she wanted to be one. After returning from France in 1968, she dove headfirst into activism. She hosted fundraisers for the Black Panthers. She spoke out about injustice, loudly and publicly, and the government noticed. The FBI began watching her closely. They tapped her phone, followed her, even broke into her house. Jane was scared, but she didn't stop. She supported Angela Davis, stood with Native Americans during protests, and refused to stay quiet. Years later, documents showed just how far the surveillance went. She and her husband were monitored by both American and British intelligence. It was a constant pressure that followed her everywhere, slowly pushing her further from Hollywood and deeper into the world of political resistance. Then came the airport incident. In November 1970, Jane was coming back from a college tour in Canada when police stopped her in Cleveland. They searched her bags and found pills, vitamins, she said. But that didn't matter. They arrested her on suspicion of drug trafficking. Later, she found out the arrest may have been ordered by the White House itself, part of a larger plan to silence her. Lab tests proved she was telling the truth, and the charges were dropped. But her mugshot, with a raised fist and a look of defiance, became iconic. Years later, that same photo was plastered on billboards and used for documentaries. She even sold mugs and shirts with the image, turning a smear campaign into a badge of honor. But none of that compared to what happened in 1972. She flew to North Vietnam at the height of the war, dressed in local clothes, carrying messages from anti-war activists back home. For 2 weeks, she toured bombed-out hospitals, schools, factories, and villages. The North Vietnamese had planned every stop carefully. They showed her only what they wanted her to see. Still, what she saw shook her. After visiting the destroyed Bach Mai Hospital, where patients and doctors had died under American bombs, Fonda broke down. She began to see the war not as a political debate, but as a brutal personal tragedy. The deeper she went, the more convinced she became that the U.S. was on the wrong side. She met farmers, students, soldiers, women's groups, people who had lost everything but refused to give in. Moved by their resilience, Fonda asked if she could speak directly to American soldiers. The North Vietnamese agreed. Over the next few days, she recorded a series of broadcasts. Her words weren't soft. She accused the U.S. government of lies, war crimes, even genocide. She praised the Vietnamese fighters and backed their 7-point peace plan. The broadcasts were aimed at American pilots and prisoners. Many of them were forced to hear her voice over and over in dark prison cells. Years later, those same men said it nearly drove them insane. But none of that caused the firestorm like what happened on her final day in Hanoi. She was taken to an anti-aircraft site, the kind used to shoot down American planes. Laughing with soldiers, wearing a military helmet, she climbed into the seat of one of the guns. Cameras snapped a photo. That single image of her smiling on a weapon aimed at her own country became a national scandal. The backlash was instant. Veterans called her a traitor. Lawmakers demanded charges. And just like that, Hanoi Jane was born. That wasn't the end. Before leaving, Fonda was brought face to face with 7 captured American soldiers. Cameras rolled as the meeting took place under tight watch. The prisoners said they were treated well. Fonda believed them. She even claimed they laughed off the idea of brainwashing. But when those men returned home and told stories of torture, she refused to believe them. She called them liars, pawns of propaganda. Even when some of their stories were later verified, Fonda didn't back down. That refusal to admit she may have been manipulated haunted haunted her for decades. When she got back to the U.S., the country exploded. Veterans groups picketed her. States tried to ban her films. Her name was mentioned in the same breath as Axis Sally, who had once spread Nazi propaganda. Her acting career came to a halt. No one in Hollywood wanted to touch her. It took 5 years and a total reinvention before she could return. Instead of hiding, she doubled down. In 1976, she created her own film company and only made movies that matched her politics. She turned down big roles if they didn't send the message she believed in. Between 1977 and 1981, she starred in films that hit back at war, nuclear energy, inequality, and corruption. She wasn't just acting, she was making statements, and it worked. She became one of the most bankable stars in the business. But her biggest project was personal. It was called Coming Home, a story about Vietnam veterans and the trauma they brought back. She pushed the project for 6 years. Studios thought it was unpatriotic. Directors backed out. Actors refused the lead role. But Fonda didn't give up. She hired her own writers, paid for the script development, and finally got the film made. When it came out, it hit hard. It won 3 Oscars and forced Americans to look at the human cost of war, not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts of those who returned. Then came one of the most eerie moments of her career. Just 12 days after her film The China Syndrome hit theaters, a thriller about a nuclear plant cover-up, a real nuclear disaster happened in Pennsylvania. The timing was chilling. Her movie suddenly looked like a warning no one had listened to. Critics took it seriously. The public couldn't ignore it. The film exploded at the box office and gave the anti-nuclear movement a powerful new symbol. While her activism gave her purpose, it was an accident that sent her down an unexpected path. In 1978, she broke her ankle on set. That injury kept her from doing ballet, so she looked for other ways to stay in shape. She found a new type of workout and quickly turned it into a booming business. She opened a studio, wrote a book, and then launched a workout video that sold millions. Her name became tied not just to protests and movies, but to fitness and fashion. She was everywhere, on screens, in gyms, in living rooms, and the money she made, she poured much of it into causes she believed in. Through all of this, one thing stayed close to her heart: her father. Henry Fonda was a legend, but he had never won an Oscar. Jane changed that. She bought the rights to a story they could do together. They filmed On Golden Pond, and just months before he died, he won. Jane accepted the award on his behalf, tears in her eyes. Their bond, once strained, was finally healed. That moment, more than any speech or protest, showed another side of her, a daughter trying to make peace. Jane Fonda seemed to have it all in the 1980s: fame, power, and critical acclaim. She was headlining hits like 9 to 5 and The Morning After, earning awards and building production companies. But underneath it all, she was quietly falling apart. Despite the spotlight, she felt hollow. By 1991, she had enough. After decades in the industry, she walked away from Hollywood. Just like that. No grand farewell, no final bow. She disappeared. What followed was a chapter filled with depression, doubt, and an aching search for meaning. At the center of it all was her marriage to Ted Turner, a relationship that demanded all of her time and none of her soul. Fonda once described it perfectly: "That's not love, it's babysitting." But something shifted. In the quiet of her absence from the screen, she found something bigger. Faith, for one. She became a Christian. That change created tension with Turner and even more confusion in her personal life. Yet through it all, she stayed out of the spotlight, far away from red carpets and cameras. She focused on herself, on activism, on healing. And then, one unexpected moment in 2005 changed everything. She was 67 when she returned to the big screen in Monster-in-Law. It wasn't an Oscar bait film. It was a comedy co-starring Jennifer Lopez. But Jane had a strategy. She knew people would show up for J.Lo, and she counted on them rediscovering her. She was right. The film made over $150 million and launched a whole new era of Fonda's career. People couldn't believe it. She was back, and somehow sharper, funnier, and bolder than ever. That momentum didn't stop. She took on film roles, but her biggest triumph came on TV. Grace and Frankie, a Netflix series starring Fonda and Lily Tomlin, broke records. It wasn't just a hit. It redefined how older women were seen on screen. These were not background characters or punchlines. They were bold, complicated, and still very much alive. And it worked. Audiences loved it. Hollywood took notice. Fonda had proven that being in your 70s didn't mean fading away. It meant starting fresh. At the same time, she became louder in real life. In 2019, after hearing Greta Thunberg say, "Our house is on fire," Jane Fonda didn't just post about it. She moved to Washington, D.C. D.C. and launched Fire Drill Fridays. Every week she protested. Every week she risked arrest. And yes, she got arrested 4 times in her 80s, but she didn't stop. She called out fossil fuel giants, spoke up for indigenous rights, and brought thousands into the climate fight. She pushed even further in 2022, launching the Jane Fonda Climate Pact. Now it wasn't just protest, it was politics. She raised money, backed candidates, and played hardball against the fossil fuel lobby. And it worked. In just 1 year, her PAC helped elect dozens of climate-focused leaders. But even with all the victories, Fonda never pretended to be invincible. At the Oscars in 2020, she ditched her blonde hair for silver and told the world she was done pretending. No more dye, no more shopping for identity, no more chasing youth. She embraced age, and with it came honesty about regrets, about death, about survival. She admitted the sun gave her skin cancer. She said goodbye to vanity, and she faced mortality with open eyes. Jane Fonda never planned to become a fitness icon. It all started in 1979 when she broke her foot while filming The China Syndrome. She could no longer do ballet, which had been her main workout routine. So instead of sitting still, she opened a small workout studio in Beverly Hills with her friend Lenny Kasdan. They called it Jane and Lenny's Workout. The place was nothing fancy, just a room with mirrors and mats. But within weeks, it exploded in popularity. Around 2,000 people were walking in and out every week, desperate to join her high-energy aerobics classes. What made it special was Jane herself. In those early days, she taught the morning classes. She wasn't just a celebrity cashing in, she was sweating right there with everyone else. People respected that. They felt like they were part of something new. Even though she was still dealing with public backlash from her Vietnam War activism, her fitness studio seemed to rise above the noise. It became a place where people could forget everything else and just move. As demand grew, Jane opened more studios in places like Encino and San Francisco. But while those eventually shut down, the Beverly Hills location kept going strong for over a decade. It finally closed in 1991, but by then, Jane had built something much bigger. She had gone from teaching a few morning classes to launching a full-on fitness empire, and it was just getting started. In 1982, when barely anyone in America owned a VCR, Jane took a wild chance. A man named Stuart Carl approached her with an idea: turn her workout into a home video. Jane was unsure at first. She didn't even know anyone who had a VCR, but she gave it a shot. They filmed her routine, complete with her now famous line, "Feel the burn," and released it as Jane Fonda's workout. What happened next was unheard of. People rushed out to buy VCRs just so they could use her tape. It ended up selling 17 million copies and became the first non-theatrical video to top the charts. The workout tape didn't just change her life, it helped shape pop culture. Suddenly, everyone was wearing leg warmers. Magazines were putting her on their covers. By 1985, she had 3 videos on Billboard's top 10 list at the same time. And she didn't stop there. Over the years, she released 29 more workout videos, even doing one at age 75. Her impact was so massive that she became the first person outside the tech world to be inducted into the Video Hall of Fame. Decades later, Jane was still proving people wrong. In 2025, she accepted the SAGI Life Achievement Award wearing a bold purple Armani gown. She stood tall and calm as she told the crowd, "Empathy is not weak or woke. It's the foundation of meaningful change." It wasn't just a speech, it was a statement. Jane had always used her platform to speak up, whether it made her popular or not. Not long after, she walked the red carpet with her granddaughter, Viva Vadim, at the Time Earth Awards Gala. She wore a rich purple Max Mara suit that turned heads again. Critics praised how she still dressed with style and strength. She didn't try to hide her age. She embraced it, challenged the rules, and made aging look powerful.